Good morning, everyone. This is Steph with Stampin' and Scrappin' with Steph, and today I'm going to share with you how to make an envelope box with 3 different tools. So it'll be the same type of box, and I'm going to show you different ways, different tools that you can use to create this box. But before we begin, I just wanted to quickly show you the new annual catalog that is going live in May. If you are one of my current customers, you will be receiving one of these in the mail. So be sure to look out in the next few weeks to come. This catalog actually goes live on May 4th and all the way through May 2nd of 2022. And it's packed with some amazing products and some of my favorite from the mini catalog has carried over. They've added some more Christmas products, so if you like to get started early, that's a bonus. I would love to show you the inside of the catalog, but unfortunately, due to Stampin' Up! Policies, we cannot do that at this moment. So today, like I said, I'm going to show you how to make this really fun envelope box. Now, this was my original box that I did, oh gosh, several years ago, and I used, I believe it's called Rooted in Nature or Nature's Root or something like that, stamp set, and then it had coordinating designer paper. I want to say this is maybe 3 or so years ago because I remember going to a convention and this was one of our pre-orders. I used Early Espresso as my base and I created a belly band with a little Velcro tab, and then you would fill this box with some completed cards and envelopes, or you could just do note cards, and it makes a really nice gift. Now this poor box has been through the ringer. You can see it's all bent and everything like that. So I wanted to recreate it, and this is the one that I made. And this one uses current product, which is the In Good Taste stamp set. No, excuse me, In Good Taste Designer Series paper. Tasteful Touches stamp set with the coordinating Tasteful Labels dies. And then I added, this is Prized Peony with the coordinating dies. And so I'll explain that as we get closer to the end of the video. But again, I did a belly band on this one. And rather than doing the Velcro, I just omitted that for this one, but I filled it. There's 4 completed cards and 4 envelopes in here, and you could fit several more depending on how layered you make your cards. So I'm going to show you the 3 tools and the 3 ways you could make this box depending on you know, what you have on hand. So the first would be probably my first choice, but I know this is a retired product. Let's zoom out. Through Stampin' Up. But envelope punch boards still exist in the world of crafting. You could probably find these at a local craft store. You may already have this on hand. So it's a really quick and easy way to create this box. And the first thing that you want to do is have a piece of paper cut to 9.5 by 9.5. Now, for the sake of my examples, I'm using a I'm not using Whisper White cardstock. I'm just using a piece of like a basic cardstock. I don't, whenever I make my templates, I always use something that's not, you know, of great quality, just because I don't want to waste if I make mistakes along the way. And then once I'm done with my final measurements and stuff like that, then I'll recreate it in, you know, a better cardstock. So, for this one, if you've never used a punch board, I believe they're all very similar. You have measurements across the top. There's also centimeters here. There's a score line that goes from this bubble thing here all the way down. Actually, it's a punch. And then you have another thing here that says score guide. Now, if you were making an envelope to go along with a specific card, you'll see that you would look here for card size, and this would be completed cards. This tells you the size of the paper you would need to cut, and this third column here would be where you're going to start your score line. And there's 3 sections with all different sizes. So it's really helpful when you're trying to figure something out. So for this one, we are going to begin our score line here at 3.5. So I always punch, which puts the little notch in the envelope. And then I'm going to grab my scoring bone folder here that comes with it. And I'm just going to go down. Now my paper is slightly longer than the board, so I'm going to go down as far as I can. Before turning, I'm going to slide the paper to the left to the 5-inch score mark, punch, okay? And then again, we are going to score. All right, we're going to turn, 1 turn, and then this is where you take this score guide and you line up that score guide to this score line here. I'm going to punch and then score. Slide it over to the next score line here. Again, punch and score. And then we're going to complete this same process on all sides until you have it all done. Now, if you were doing this on your own, you could get through several of these rather quickly because this part's pretty easy. And the nice thing is there's not a lot of cutting to do that. Okay, so now we have the template here. Hopefully my lighting is catching everything. It's a kind of dark, cloudy day here today. So even though I have all my lights on, my workspace is in a basement. Unfortunately, lighting is always a challenge. But what you can do also, if you prefer, is this has a little rounder at the end here. So if you want to round the points of your envelope, you would just stick it in, punch it, and then turn it and punch it. And I'm not doing these 2 side tabs because you're not going to see them once you create the envelope. So now I'm going to move this over. All right, and we have the base for the for your envelope. So you'll see you've got 4 sets of score lines, actually 8 sets because there's 2 of each. You have your 2 short sides and your 2 longer sides. So then what you're going to do is you're going to fold on all those score lines and give it a nice burnish with your bone folder. And for this, these larger ends, you have one here and one here. This is going to be the top and bottom of your envelope. So if you notice, here's the same part. So it's the top, here's the bottom, and then you have the 2 smaller pieces. So what you would do, and it's totally a preference, but you have these 4 little sections here that really are not necessary. But I just decided a top and a bottom, so this would be my bottom, and you're gonna just cut up to that score line here, to the second score line, and create these little tabs, okay? For the top of this box, we no longer need these 2 little sections, so I'm just gonna cut them out. Just like that. All right, so now you have these 2 sections taken out and these trimmed up. So the next thing you want to do is assemble your box. So you're going to fold your 2 sides in just like that. And you don't want to like push them in because you want to try to keep it as straight up as possible. So I would recommend adhering one side at a time. So when you fold this piece over, I want to make sure that my edges line up in this corner. So as you can see, you don't need adhesive all the way up to the tip of this, otherwise you'll have adhesive showing here and that's going to catch on your card. So I would just add the adhesive here, okay, and then stick your side here. And then do the same thing on this side. And then that would be your completed box. You could add like a Velcro piece like I did on this one. Or you can go ahead and create a belly band with the piece of paper that we cut off. So when you cut your 12 by 12 down, you get two strips. You have one that's a little bit longer and wider. Actually, it should be the same width, but just a little bit longer. And this one is the perfect size to wrap around as a belly band. You could trim it to make it a little bit thinner if that's too thick for you. I just left it as is and then decorated mine that way. So that is the envelope box with the punch board, okay? So now we are going to do the diagonal. We're actually going to do the Stampin' scoreboard. All right. Now, again, the Stampin' Up scoreboard is still available. However, the diagonal plate has since been retired. So if you have another scoreboard that has a diagonal on it, that'd be great. Otherwise, you would have to do some fancy paper turning to get it where you want. And you could do the same thing when I show you on the paper trimmer. You could kind of mimic that onto the scoreboard. But since I have the diagonal plate, I'm going to use it. Again, my paper is cut to the size that we need, which is the 9.5 by 9.5. And I believe, let's see, this is my completed sample where I've already started scoring, but I'm going to show you this and then we will move on. All right, so it comes with a little stylus for scoring. It has a little ball end here, and then this one is slightly bigger. So you're going to use the smaller one for cardstock, the larger one if you were using a designer series paper or a thinner type of paper. So we're going to start, same thing, I've marked it at 3.5, and then we're just going to score all the way down. And then I'm going to move over to 5. Okay, and then here's where the tricky part kind of lies in. When we're doing the scoreboard, the envelope scoreboard, you can kind of see that here's our 3.5 and our 5-inch lines, and then this is when we turn it and we score again. It's slightly thinner, but not overly visible to the eye. So when you make your box, it's not like you've got really skinny sides and really wide tops and bottoms. So it's important to adjust your score lines for that. I didn't realize that in the beginning. And so what happened was when I completed doing the scoreboard and going around, I kept my scoring 3.5 and at 5 all on 4 sides. So then when you go to assemble and fold the box, these pieces, if you can see, don't overlap. They just meet at the edges. So there's really no place to put adhesive unless you're like really pushing it in, and then that just changes the whole dynamics of the box. So just something to keep in mind if you're going to try this on your own. So what I have found that works is once I turn this, I'm going to do 4 1/8 is one score line. And then I move over to, I think this is 5 1/8. Oh, is that right? 4 1/8, 5 1/8. Let's see. Let me double check. Yes. don't think that's right. Hold on. So sorry, I've done this so many times and I just want to make sure I get this correct for you. It's a little deceiving when it lines up. So it's this one right here, I believe. Yeah, 4 3/8. Excuse me, 5 3/8. My apologies. Okay, so we're gonna do 4 1/8, and then 5 3/8. Okay. And then when you turn one more time, we're gonna go back to the 3 1/2 and to the 5. Turn again, and this would be 4 1/8 and the 5 3/8. Okay. And you could adjust the scoring, you know, play around with it. It does give you a little bit of a taller box than what you get on the envelope scoreboard. I hope that makes sense. So as you can see, like, so this was my first template and you put it together. So this is the scoreboard and that is the punch board. So you could totally play around and adjust my dimensions any way that you want. This is what I figured out in the end that seemed to work, and where there's just a slight difference in the height, it doesn't affect how many cards can fit in here because it's still the same width. It's just slightly taller. So you'll just have a deeper reach. It's not that big of a deal. I figured instead of fussing over this, I was just gonna leave it as is once I got that dimension down. All right, so for this one, again, we're gonna fold on our score lines. And just like the envelope box, we need to cut off some bits because they're not necessarily needed. And it makes folding this so much easier. All right, so we have our sides, we have the bottom, and we have a top. So you can see my tabs are a little bit smaller than the envelope punch board, but like I said, in all honesty, everything closes just fine. So same thing, I'm gonna trim up to that score line at the bottom, and then I'm gonna remove this section here on the top. If you want to round this, take a corner rounder out. If you have a crocodile, if you have one of the retired Stampin' Up ones, and we actually have a current product that is a triple punch, and it's called the Detailed Trio. And this has a section here that you can totally round your paper. So you would just stick it in, punch, and then turn and punch. And then you would assemble this the same way you would the other box, or the envelope box. So for this one, it's a little tricky because we have this little notch right here. So let's get rid of that. We don't need this little thing. And that's just because of the way the score lines overlap. And that's what gets like chopped off with the envelope punch board when you punch there, is these little unnecessary bits. All right. So I would put adhesive on these two tabs and then fold them in. I would add some adhesive to this edge and then fold this up. And then here's my top. And again, you could do a piece of Velcro or a belly band for that one. Super simple once you get going with it. And then the last one I'm going to show you is using a paper trimmer. Now, the paper trimmer, I will say, out of all three that I used, was probably the trickiest. And it took a little bit of, little more time to think about how this is going to work. I'm going to zoom in, and unfortunately, you won't be able to see everything, but I'm going to do my best to show you. So on the trimmer, I drew some pencil lines. I don't know if you can see this one here, and then a couple up here as my guides. And I did it in pencil because I want to be able to erase those. I don't want to keep my board, my trimmer all marked up, because then sometimes it gets confusing with other projects. So this one I've already kind of notched out the pieces. The important thing when doing the marks on the trimmer is you're using the edge of the paper, you're using your point, and that's going to create your score lines. Okay, so actually I'm going to try to zoom out. Come on. All right, so you may not be able to see exactly where I'm putting the line unless you zoom in a little bit, but similar to the scoreboard, you have to figure out the difference in the width when you turn it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the same problem of having that box come out and not have the sides overlap enough, so you won't really have a place to put the adhesive. So what I found was I'm going to start with the point of this paper. So it's still 9.5 by 9.5, and I'm turning it on the diagonal, okay? And I'm lining up my point with this 2 3/8 mark, and then I drew a pencil line up top. So, because once I move my paper, it covers the numbers. So I have a line right up here that I'm lining this point up with. And then on the bottom of my trimmer, I drew a line in the same spot, the 2 3/8 mark, but I drew it on the edge here so that I can shift that point to that mark. Otherwise, I couldn't tell the other way where the 2 3/8 mark was. And I'm not so worried that this paper kind of pops up a little bit, because the score line here is what's important. So I'm going to line up that edge with 2 3/8, and then I'm making sure I have that tip, that little point at the bottom, and then I'm going to come down, not with my trimmer, and then I would score. Now remember, I've already cut out the piece here. All right, and then what you're going to do is we're going to slide this over, and I'm using for this side this 1-inch line. Okay, so I moved over an inch, and I'm just making sure all the way down that paper lines up with this 1-inch line, and then I would score. Okay, now you're going to turn it once, and now I'm dealing with this point again, and so this time this would be at 2 7/8 here. And I did the same thing at the bottom. I drew a pencil line that extended to the bottom edge of my paper. I make sure that the points on those two ends meet those lines, and then I'm going to score. All right, and now I'm going to move this one over, and this would be at 7/8. And what I did, since the way you turn your paper, you have visible paper trimmer available. So I took a ruler and I went from the 7/8 mark up top to the 7/8 mark at the bottom, and I drew a pencil line. That way, when I'm lining this score line up with the 7/8 line, I can see that I'm straight all the way down, and then I would score it. So I'm showing you on the piece that I cut, and I'll do it really quickly here on this. So now I'm lining the top and the bottom with the 2 3/8, and then I score. Okay, now I'm moving over to the 1-inch score line, which is a line that goes all the way from the top to the bottom, and then I'm scoring. Now you might be wondering why my dimensions are slightly different with the tools. Is just this is the best way that I was able to figure out having them pretty much come out almost the same, with just a slight variation, but to me that wasn't that big of a deal. If I was going to duplicate this and make several, the easiest way I probably would be the punch board, but the purpose of this video is to show you options if you don't have one of the 3 tools. You know, so that's what I did for that one. All right, and so now for this one, we're gonna go at 2 7/8, line up my tops and bottom. I'm gonna score, then I'll move this over to that pencil line that I drew for the 1 7/8 mark. And then I would turn with the point again, start all over at 2 3/8, move that over to the 1-inch line, score, turn it again. This would be 2 7/8, and then slide this over to that pencil line for the 7/8, and then I would score. All right, and so that gives you the base. And again, you'll fold on all those score lines, and you'll see that it's very similar look to what you would get if you use the scoreboard as far as these little bits here. And you're gonna cut them out the same way we did to assemble the envelope box. So I have all these little white templates. I might have to make some boxes after all. But here's the one that I already cut out. So you'll see I created my top, my bottom. I cut out that little bit here. And then for this one, I came all the way up to that score line. And the last thing that I need to do is just trim out this little triangle bit, because it just creates a little bit of a pain when folding the box in and assembling. All right, so again, I would add some adhesive here because that helps to reinforce the bottom. I would add the adhesive on these sides. I would suggest like a tear and tape or a sticky strip, something that has a bit of weight to it to keep the box in a folded position. Add a a Velcro circle or something like that, or just simply create the belly band. And the belly band, like I said, when you trim that first strip, fits perfectly around, and you can then decorate. So for the new box, this is Smoky Slate cardstock. I did create this one using the envelope punch board, and I started with the 3.5-inch score line, and then you move it over again to the 5. The paper that I used is the In Good Taste with a base color of Night of Navy. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, this was Prized Peony. These 2 feathers are from the Tasteful Touches, and there is no dies, so I just simply fussy cut those out. And then I added from the Forever Flourishing dies these particular leaves, and I did Gray Granite, Night of Navy, and Rococo Rose, which is one of our retiring in colors. The 2 banner pieces are from the Tasteful Touches or Tasteful Labels dies, Night of Navy and Whisper White. And I just added some twine with our silver cording, which will be coming out in the new annual catalog. Now, one of the things that I failed to mention in the beginning of this video is when I decided to recreate this box, the purpose was to show product that is carrying over into the new annual catalog. So everything that I have featured here with the exception of the Retired Rococo Rose. And the only reason that I use this color is because it is in the paper pack. It is one of the colors in the paper pack. But you could also use Petal Pink or, you know, a different shade. Because it's neutrals, the pink really doesn't matter. But anyway, let's focus. Okay, so normally our designer series paper does not carry over. And this In Good Taste designer series paper pack will be available in the new annual catalog in May. So I thought this was a nice product to showcase. And what I did is I created 4 identical cards just with different designer series paper. I stamped, this flower is actually from the Tasteful Touches stamp set. And then the leaves, and there is a background there that I did in Petal Pink. I stamped off before stamping down on these colors. And the saying is in the Night of Navy. Super easy layout. So it allowed me to create these cards rather quickly for the purpose of, you know, making a little gift pack to give away. And then I finished the fronts of the envelopes with that same type of pattern, except this time I added this little leaf, and I did the same thing here on the inside. So everything is completed as if you were giving this as a gift. So that is my project for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're somebody who makes envelope boxes or gift boxes, I think this is a really good simple way of making multiples, you know, in a very short amount of time. So I want to say thank you for joining me, and till next time, happy stamping.